right, hey everybody. My name is Ryan Johnston. I'm your host for Seat of the Fire podcast, and I'm joined today by a friend of mine who's been in the fire service for quite a while. His name is Jason Mills. We've known each other for quite some time. Matter of fact, I think we went to that paramedic school thing together, and fortunately for everybody, I didn't finish it, and Jason did. So I think that's pretty awesome. So Jason, tonight we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, his business and some stuff. About him, his career, and those sorts of things. But Jason is a licensed clinical professional counselor providing mental health counseling for first responders and their families through the Wellness Center of Maine. He is retired from the Augusta Fire Department, retired in 2022 after a 25-year career as a lieutenant firefighter paramedic. In his 25 years as a first responder, he also worked for Lifeline of Maine. Jason does utilize his formal education in clinical mental health along with his experiences as a first responder to provide support and practical solutions to other first responders. He is crisis intervention team, crisis incident stress management, acute stress adaptive protocol, peer support certified, and eye movement desensitization and reprocessing trained. That's a lot. He's also a SYMBIS certified marriage and relationship counselor. Jason is an adjunct faculty at the Southern Maine Community College and is on the advisory council for the University of Maine's Trauma Informed Emergency Management Program. Jason is passionate about teaching. He owns the Resilient Responder, a company that provides mental health resiliency and EMS training to the first responder community. Jason lives in Chelsea with his wife Tiffany and his dog Tillman. Together they have 4 adult children who they are very proud of. They have a passion for traveling and they love exploring new places and enjoying new experiences. So I hope everybody got that all. And that's quite a bit, Jay. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Mills.
that's pretty accurate. That sums it
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Did I miss
Yeah,
anything?
uh, man, if you did, we'll come back around to it at some point.
All
That's a
right.
pretty good that's a pretty good summary of the last 40 years or so.
Isn't that crazy, though?
Yeah, I appreciate the
40
invite.
years.
Awesome to
Man,
be here.
yeah. Great. So today we're just, like I said, we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. Jason owns the Resilient Responder, which I can remember back in the infancies of it. We talked a few times on the front bumper of our firehouse there, a couple of things about it, and bounced some ideas off each other, which I really appreciate. We had a pretty good conversation those days. So, and I know Jason's been doing a lot of good things for the first responder community, and we'll get to those as well in a couple of minutes. So Jay, you became this licensed counselor. What was the motivation to do that and to help first responders? Was it something that was there a lack of it, or something you experienced when you were on the job, or what really made this jump into you and take off with it?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying it wasn't a lifelong dream.
Right.
Because there was at no point up until it happened that I had ever had any intention in getting into this world of mental health. And like a lot of us, I was trying to avoid being a client, right? So if you talk to anybody
Right.
and said, hey, Jason Mills is going to be involved in the mental health process, probably people would have went, well, that's probably good. He probably should engage in some of that type of help. But to end up on this side of it was certainly never in the plan at all. And it did kind of come by. It became just this thought towards the end of my career that I started kind of kicking around about reflecting on my experiences and what was available at times for myself and for the other members of our department and people that I knew when we had needed that service. And kind of routinely what I was experiencing and what some of the people that I worked with, coworkers and friends were experiences was that when we got to the point that we were reaching out for help, first of all, we're doing a lot better job of trying to get people to access the mental health services earlier than we used to. By the time we were reaching out, we were in a pretty bad spot. And what we were finding was that the resources that we were accessing weren't always what we would call now culturally competent. They didn't understand the work that we were doing. Not that they weren't good counselors, not that they weren't well intentioned, but the work that we do in our lives are very much different than the lives of most people. And you really, from a counseling side, need to be able to understand that world to be useful for the people that are coming into your office. So what we found was people that were coming in, myself included, weren't necessarily being assisted to the best we could. So I get this idea kicking around. very late in my career that maybe I'd do that. And I got to tell you, I didn't like the idea. It was almost like a subconscious idea that came in. And
Yeah.
I got to tell you, if I could have hit my head off at something hard enough to push it out, I would have. And I couldn't, and it just hung around there. And so I end up looking into what it would look like to do this. And I made my deal. I made a deal with myself. We all have preconceived ideas of what mental health is like. And I sat there having these conversations with myself about, well, I'm not going to be able to be in the mental health profession because, I own a truck and I have guns and I own at the time I owned a construction company. I'm like, there's none of the things about me that I think fit into this stereotypical idea of mental health, which is maybe why it wasn't very well received when we were trying to access help. So I make this deal with myself that I'm going to give it a shot, but I'm going to approach it in a way that I think it might be useful for people like me, and I might be able to help the people that have gone through the things that I went through. So I went through school and was really lucky to get an internship with the Wellness Center of Maine, which is where I work out of now. Got licensed, and so I've been providing clinical mental health care now for a little over a year as a licensed clinical professional counselor through that organization, and it's given me the opportunity to really stay in the fire service. I got out in 2022 after 25 years. And so this has allowed me to maintain that connection. It gives me a sense of purpose, which is when we look at things that firefighters, police officers, military personnel struggle with when they retire, is maintaining a sense of purpose, a sense of identity. So it kind of keeps me in and around the firehouse, interacting with a lot of the people that, the type of people that I really like. And it gives me the ability to help. And that's been pretty rewarding so far in the last year or so.
That's pretty awesome. I know that you've always been there for a lot of us in our job with this, and just in the short year that you've been doing it. I kind of bring myself back to an evening where I made a phone call to you for well, I'll be honest with you, at the time it was a Facebook friend of mine, and I'm sure you remember that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell a little bit about the story just to kind of put it out there, but we'll keep all the names out of it, of course. But so here I am one evening just before I go to bed, and I was out. I was just coming back from a training. I was teaching somewhere, and I scrolled on Facebook because after an hour and a half drive, I can't just go to bed. So I scrolled on Facebook, and I see this post of someone that I had just had in a training probably a month or two prior, maybe even a little bit longer. And it was something that just didn't resonate right with me. It was I don't even know. So I reached out to the young man and talked to him for a minute, and he was in a bad way. And I'm like, man, I am not the guy. I'm not, I mean, I know the resources, but I'm not the guy to talk to. But that was the choice right then, you know what I mean? I'm like, I made a choice to call him. And so I called him, and I'm like, what's going on? Everything okay? What do you need? We had a conversation, and while I'm doing that, I'm like texting Jason. I'm like, bro, I'm in a conversation with somebody. I'm in over my head, and you were instrumental. I mean, there was all kinds of barriers that we had to go around, and it was amazing that just that little bit of help that you did, the little bit that I did, and then people on the other end who I also knew that I was messaging saying, hey, can you get here? Because I'm just on the phone. You guys live close to this guy, and it happened. And did we save a guy's life that night? I like to think so. I talk to that dude quite often, and I would say, yeah, we saved that guy's life that night. And it's a different kind of feeling, one that, quite honestly, I wasn't sure I was comfortable with because it was very strange to me. And I mean, maybe you can elaborate on a little bit. We've saved lives in the fire service. We're a life-saving organization. But when we start helping our own in a different way, it's very challenging, but yet rewarding, right?
Yeah. That whole process that story that you just recounted really illustrates for me the layers that we're starting to build within the fire service, and hopefully also law enforcement, in EMS, of a group approach to this, right? It's not
Yeah.
And no different than most of the times when we go to a scene, very, very rarely do you say, hey, one person saved a life, right? It was one person in and of themselves individually. If you're fortunate, you have a group effort that changes the outcome for somebody in a positive way.
Right.
And that's essentially the same thing that happened that night. Was we're starting to build a community of people like yourself that are understanding and listening and know the signs of when something is not right. And sometimes it can be pretty intangible. It doesn't always look like, hey, I'm checking out, gone, I'm not coming back, I'm taking my own life
Right.
tonight. A
Right.
lot of times it's these kind of subtle messages that, like you said, you read that and you went, something's just not right there. And
Mm-hmm.
what you could have done was said, I'm going to bed. It's been a long day.
Yep.
Okay? But it struck something in you enough, and you knew that I probably ought to at least check in. And at the very least, what's the harm in checking in? If I check in with this guy and he says, no, I'm all good, man. I'm just whatever. Then okay, you've invested a few minutes of time. But when you check in on him, it sends that message to him that somebody actually thinks I'm worth caring about. And that's a pretty powerful message, because
Very.
people that are in that spot where they're considering taking their own lives, they don't think that they have a value. In fact, a lot of times people feel a lot of guilt or shame. They feel like they're a burden. And so when somebody reaches out to them and says, hey, I care enough about you to take some time, and especially even in that position for you where you're a stranger, like somebody out there thinks I'm worth something.
Yeah.
And that starts that that starts that process of that intervention. And yeah, maybe you weren't the person that walked him through eventually, but you were the person that was the intervention, and it went and started the intervention.
Right.
And then that's why we're pushing so hard for our peer teams, because our peer teams are the people that are out there that are recognizing changes on a subtle level the first time things start to happen. If you think about my experience as a counselor, if I don't know somebody, the first time they come into my office, I don't know what their baseline is. I have no idea what that person's
Mm-hmm.
normal behaviors are. And it may take me months of working with them before I really understand that. But if I have somebody in the fire service and you work with somebody on a daily basis, you absolutely know what that person's baseline is. You
No
see the
question.
subtle changes. So we're really trying to emphasize the need for the peer support stuff. But in your experience that night, we got to be able to take care of the peer supporters too, because that's not a job that is without its own impact. And I think
Right.
that was more the conversation that you and I had was,
Right.
what do I do with this? Like, I just intervened with somebody's process, with somebody's suicidal ideation or suicide plan, and I think I did the right thing, and you did. But you're like, holy hell, like that was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the type of stuff like that we need to be able to decompress you afterwards to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that you're all right, because you've got to
Right.
continue to function in the next day too.
Absolutely.
So it becomes a team approach, and there's no one person in it that's really any more important than another. But what we're doing is that we're creating a network of people that are always looking out for each other,
Mm.
and that's the great work that we're doing.
Yeah, you guys are doing some amazing stuff out there. One of the things I'll add to that is we had a situation years ago with a Mayday in a fire that I was at, and same type of deal. Seeing something, getting the resources there, and I actually use that now at the end of almost every class that I teach to advocate. Knowing your people, knowing the subtle differences and things like that, things that
Mhm.
you and I have talked about that I've learned from you. I portray that in my classes, what little bit of education that I have on it and what I've learned on it. Excuse me. And so I want to thank you for that, because you've opened my eyes to a tremendous amount of things that you know maybe I was doing it anyway, but I didn't. It was almost subconsciously.
Mhm.
And but having our conversations, it's like, wow, there's so much to this, Jay. There's just and you don't ever know when you're going to run into that one scenario where you're going to make that difference. You're going to be part of that team that makes that difference, and that's it's exhilarating. It's an amazing thing. So talking about the mental health stuff in the fire service, or even in the first responder world, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges in mental health for the first responder community? What do you think is there a I don't even know how to ask the question. But what do you think is the biggest challenges that we're facing, and how do we face those challenges?
I would say that the one of the biggest challenges that I see is directly tied into how I started the company that I'm doing now, which is the resilient responder part of it. And that is, I don't think that we're necessarily always doing a good job on providing the education up front. And I don't think that we're doing a good job in preventative actions. So we're getting better, or I think we're really breaking down the stigma. I don't think that that's such an issue anymore. I think that's on the kind of the tail end headed out. As the newer generations come in, they're coming in and this is normal for them.
Right.
I kind of think about it as the use of technology, right? Like you and I, when we were going through our career, when we started, we were doing paper reports. So we had to learn how to turn that into using, electronic reports and whatever else. The crews the people that are coming into this line of work now, they've always known computers, right? It's easy for them. And I think that's kind of similar to the way that we handle mental health, is that our generation, when we first started, it wasn't really something that we talked about very much. There weren't probably any identified resources. It wasn't something that was introduced to me in my probationary year. I didn't have any part of it in any type of rookie school. But we learned it as we went, and so now we're getting better, and it's kind of part of our lives now. The people that are entering this profession now, it should be, if it's not, it should be part of what they're being taught really from day one, is how do we access and that. So I think that we're starting to get better at breaking down the stigma, but I still think we're still handling it from a reactive point. We're still looking at this of, hey, if you develop these symptoms of anxiety or depression, PTSD symptoms, here's the signs of it, and here are some resources. Here's somebody that maybe you could call. One, I'll say we could definitely use more resources in the line of clinicians. Kind of every time I go out and do any type of lecture, I make sure to mention to all the people that are there, hey, if you're thinking about what you're going to do when you retire, or if you want a side gig, maybe you ought to look into being a clinician, because you don't have to be outside in the cold when you do it, and it's a pretty good job.
Yeah, no doubt.
So I'm trying to recruit, because we could definitely use more people that understand the culture working with our firefighters and our police officers, because that really is what starts the initial connection, and a lot of times that's what makes somebody feel like they're comfortable talking to me, is they go, well, this guy's kind of done that job before, so he understands these things. Even the language. I mean, think about the language that we use.
Yep.
That is not normal to regular language. And if you can talk the talk, people feel more comfortable. Even for people not having to explain what they do for work. Right. When you tell somebody, when they say, well, I got forced in the other day and I had stuff to do, and my family, whatever, and they go, well, just don't take the overtime. Well, that's not really an option. When they tell you you're not leaving, you're not leaving.
Right.
So anyways, I think that we're getting a little bit better at that. We're getting better at saying, hey, these are some things that you might experience: anxiety, depression, PTSD, those kind of big ones. We're not doing a great job, I don't think, at saying, hey, how do we avoid that, right? We're looking at how do we treat it once it happens. But we're not saying you're getting into a career that has an extraordinarily high level of traumatic incidents, and this is going to impact you in some way. What are you doing to set yourself up for success? I make the analogy of, if you get into a boxing ring and your plan is to just not get hit, you're going to be in for a long night, or maybe a short night. It could be either way, right? If you're going into an environment that is that has a high level of impact, you need to be training yourself for what you can't just go in and hope for the best.
Right.
And so that's where we need to be, I think, is we need to be looking at what are we doing up front to make ourselves strong. Because that does kind of come back on on our own responsibility to some extent. It's my responsibility to take care of myself and put myself in a good position for these outcomes that I might see. When I work with an individual client, I'm working with one person. So in the course of a day, I can 6 or 8 people I might be able to see. But if we provide the education up front, I might be able to talk to 20, 30, 40 people in the course of a class and provide that education. So that's what I really like to do. I love getting out and doing the education, because I think that we're preventing injury and we're increasing quality of life by doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think we're providing the education that makes it. I try to provide the education in a way that I think it is pertinent to the people, to the audience. We talk about mental health. I taught a class yesterday, and I asked the class, there's 20, 30 people in it, I asked the class to define mental health. And there wasn't anybody that was able to define mental health. And I said, well, don't feel bad, because the American Psychiatric Association, the National Institute of Health, and the World Health Organization can't agree on a definition of it either.
Right.
To the extent that the National Institute of Health just put out an article that the inability to identify what mental health is a barrier to mental health.
Oh
So,
my God.
yeah. So I said, okay, well, these are the best people in the world
Yeah.
at this topic, and they can't agree on what the topic actually is. And I said, because it's a pretty non-tangible thing. It actually is really made up of a bunch of other things. When we start breaking down mental health into things that are more tangible, the more tangible I can make it, the more receptive our audience is to it. Mm-hmm. And the more I can explain it in terms that are very just matter of fact, the more likely I am to engage in it. If I can understand that the way that I behave is a result of chemical changes in my body, and I can tell you what the chemicals are and how they interact with each other, well, then I can go, oh, I get it. That's just a chemical effect. And I make kind of an analogy of like, if you drink a bunch of alcohol, you're going to behave differently, right? Because you just dumped a bunch of chemicals into your body.
Yeah.
Well, that's not different from the way the chemicals that are in our body interact with each other under stress and under different conditions. You add a different chemical, you get a different output, and that's kind of fun to make that analogy. And and I think it hits home that there's something there's tangible and there's something we can do about it.
Absolutely. I will say I've sat through a couple of your classes, and I envy the way that you can take these fire-related terms and turn them into your classes and turn it into the mental health thing, if you will. The maintenance program class that you do, I think is probably one of my favorite classes I've ever sat through, which is saying a lot for people who know who I am and what I do, and even I'm even talking some of my classes, and I'm pretty biased, but that the maintenance class that you put on, it just struck me as something that it just hit home, and so if anybody out there is listening and you're a chief and you want Jason to come in, please do so. We'll get you his information at the end of the podcast. But amazing classes. You spoke for me at a program that I put on last summer, and you did an amazing job there as well. And then the thing is that I'm seeing in the 3 or 4 times I've seen you speak is that you are able to resonate with everybody in the room. And it doesn't matter if it's a cop, fireman, EMT, paramedic, dispatcher. It doesn't matter. You have this way of connecting with them that's special. And I don't think there are many out there that can do it the way you do because of where you come from. And that is something that's very special, Jay, and I don't think you'll ever lose it, so I'm not going to tell you not to lose it. But it's something that I teach quite a bit, and there's days I hit home runs, and there's days I strike out, just depending on the crowd and where it's at. And so watching what you do and how you can bring a topic, which I'm going to be very honest, when you read mental health or anything to do with it, when you look at it, you're like, well, this is going to be a 3-hour, 45-minute class, because you're just like, wow, right? And then you just make it so it's like, oh my God, that was 3 hours, and it went by quick. So kudos to you, my man. It's been awesome. So in teaching these classes, the Resilient Responders kind of came out, your company there, and talk about how that came into play for you and what's going on with that.
Yeah, so this is a little over a year old now, or about a year old that we've been doing. So it's a pretty short, it's a very new company. Mm-hmm. And I did it just because I wanted to be able to get this education out there. And what I'm trying to do is kind of spread this message. We're trying to brand this. Also, you see like the logo behind us, the logo on the shirt. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to make this brand a message for people that will see this logo, that I don't have to be present or somebody else doesn't have to be present. If somebody sees one of our logos someplace, I want the person that's looking at it to go, if I'm struggling, I can go talk to that person.
Right.
right? If you have one of our hats or sweatshirt and somebody sees that, I mean, I kind of make the statement to people that if you're not willing to talk about some of these issues, don't take any of our gear, right? Because somebody may come up and talk to you about it, and I don't want you to go, it's not really my thing, right?
Yeah.
So don't put our stuff on if you're not willing to have
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But if we can get people wearing that, then it starts raising that awareness of, hey, this is part of life. This is part of life is what we do. So we're trying to brand it. We're trying to get that out there so that it's not just me having a conversation anymore. If we get 200 pieces of gear out there, then there's 200 people that are wearing our stuff that other people are going to see and go, that's somebody that's wearing that stuff, and that's somebody that I think I can talk to. So the message that's being sent by them is, this would be an okay conversation to have. And I can't be everywhere all the time, but the more we spread this out, the bigger we make that safety net. And that's, kind of like what you did for that person that night. You were able to catch that. But there's a lot of people that are, kind of maybe some still quietly suffering with some stuff or struggling with some stuff. And we want to be, we want to create like a force multiplier. We want to have people out in a lot of different places. So the way I got into the teaching part was I love teaching. I don't really have any other talents. I can't sing. I can't dance. I don't play instruments. I can't really speak another language. About 3 sentences of Spanish that I remember from high school. But I like to teach. I like taking a subject that's important to me, that I feel passionate about, and I like to be able to transform that subject into a way that if you haven't ever interacted with that subject, when you leave the class, you'll have an understanding of it that works for you. And so we can take stuff that, we can take words that sound like, neuroscience and things like that, and, neurogenesis, and then we can take those words and okay, those words don't actually matter if the person that's in the class doesn't understand them. But can I understand that alcohol makes me act funny, and also a drug or a chemical called cortisol changes the way I behave too. And if I don't manage my cortisol levels, I may act in a very similar way that I might act if I was a little bit intoxicated, which means I might be more irritable, I might be more unpredictable, I might have a higher level of emotional instability. And then we take that and go, well, why would that happen? Why would you be having these high levels, right? And what would be able to do to curve that? And so I love that aspect of teaching. I love to be able to take a subject and make it relatable to the audience. And the other part is, if you don't learn anything, at least you hope you're entertained. And so I hope the classes are at least, I hope the classes are at least, relatively funny or entertaining. And
Bro, that's my wheelhouse right there.
Yeah.
I try to make people laugh because it makes them more comfortable.
Yeah.
It gets rid of the staleness,
Yeah.
and I think they tend to remember what we're talking about a little bit more. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And one of the things that they tell you as a counselor, when you're going through the training is like, don't overshare with your clients. Don't let them know who you are. And I don't buy into that, right? When I get up and teach, if I'm able to tell the audience, hey, I'm not up here preaching to you and telling you if you do things the way Jason Mills does things that, you'll never have any issues in your life and everything will be perfect. I'll tell you a funny story. Okay, this is a quick little funny story. I taught down in Augusta where I worked for 25 years. And I was teaching a bunch of their new people that were there. And at the end of the class, one of the new people said, were these all like the techniques that you used during your career to get through in a really healthy and positive way? And like 4 people that I had worked with for 20 years were standing behind him. And, the reaction was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Because they had seen the process play out. And I do make the statement of nobody ends up in mental health because everything went really well. So
Exactly.
there's something that pushes you there. But back to the teaching side of it, I really like providing the education, and we're doing some other stuff. Our company now is doing some stuff with EMS education and community education for CPR and things like that. We recruit really good people that are passionate about what they're doing. We try to find areas that they're passionate about, and we try to encourage them to go do that. And then if they're happy and they feel like we're working with them and we're supporting them, we allow them to take the stuff that they want to teach. And we have great people going out. Like we're creating really good positive impacts in the community. And
Absolutely.
I'm really happy to be part of that. We've got a great team that we've kind of gathered.
Yeah, I saw the post there a few weeks ago, like something big coming, and then a bunch of people that I know started posting, "Hey, I'm working at the Resilient Responder. I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing this," and that's great. You have a great community of people you have one in particular that I'm thinking of, and I'm going to say his name here in a second. But this young man is he's the real deal. He worked with you in Augusta for a little while. Anthony Barton,
Yeah,
that boy. I'm telling you right now, whatever he touches turns to gold.
yeah.
So
I
you hit a home run getting that kid, man. I'm telling you, I say kid, he's 30 some odd years old or whatever.
yeah,
But just all the great things that Anthony does for the community that he lives in, for the community he works for, and beyond. Right? I mean, the softball tournaments, the park in Clinton, all these things that he does just turns to gold. He's a great guy. So seeing him working with you is going to just make the resilient responder that much better.
yeah.
So
I,
that was a home run.
Yeah, Anthony's a great guy.
Yeah.
When we started this, I'm like, who would be this person? And it didn't take long. I'm like, yeah, Anthony's the guy, right?
Yeah,
Like,
no
he's
doubt.
smart. Everybody likes him.
Yeah.
He's, I maybe shouldn't, but I text him sometimes at like 11:45 at night, and sometimes at 5:15 in the morning. And he answers, so I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
waking him up or
Yeah.
not, or if he's just working really hard. But he's great. He's the director of our EMS, the EMS education for us, and he's been honestly, he's a find. He's a great guy,
Absolutely.
and he's brought.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that this about our personalities, we have a need for high level of control, right?
Hmm.
Anthony's a guy that I'm able to hand stuff over to, and I don't have to worry about it at all. I
Absolutely.
put that over there. He's brought in great people, and yeah, I'm so excited for it.
No, that's great. You guys are doing awesome with that. What's next for the resilient responder, and more importantly, what's next for Jason Mills?
Wow, for the resilient responder, we're trying to build this out. We are working on the preventative side of stuff. We have a program that does preventative resiliency training. One of the really exciting things that we're doing that is we're building an app. We're going to have an app-based application for our program. So that's really exciting. We're going to try to get some stuff out onto our learning management system so people can pick up some classes through that. If you don't have time to attend a class, you'll be able to jump on, get some information. We're trying to work to build that community. And
Nice.
what's next for me? I don't know. I mean, it's I guess the opportunities keep kind of knocking on the door, and so
Hmm.
I do keep answering it. I will say I've been given the opportunity to be involved in a lot of things that I never would have thought that I'd be able to be involved in.
Hmm.
And certainly none of my high school teachers would have ever thought that I'd be involved in. So I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
We just want to keep pushing out, more education. One of the things I'm working on that will come up hopefully this spring, maybe early summer, is there's a real need for financial education for our first responders. I see that as being one of the things that starts the ball rolling on a lot of other bad stuff. So I'm working my way through it now, an accredited financial advisor program, and when I get done with that, I'll be able to teach financial literacy and financial counseling to our first responders and help them put themselves into a good position for not only for their career, but so when they're at the end of their career, if they decide that they want to get out of the fire service, they have that ability.
Absolutely.
It's not a career that's not without some bumps and bruises along the way. So when you get to that 25-year mark, you want to be thinking, well, do I
Yep.
want to stay? Do I want to go? Do I have the ability to do that? So
Unless you're crazy like me and you just retire and then keep doing it, but
yeah,
uh,
retired, and I work a lot more hours now.
yeah, yeah, no
Yeah,
doubt.
yeah,
I work more days in a row now.
yeah, exactly.
One of the things I'll mention, the financial thing you're talking about, is that, and I've seen this a lot lately. Departments are doing financial background checks on employees or potential employees, and I think there's a huge reason for that, and it's not just these corporations. I'm talking police, fire, EMS, dispatching. That's what's going down now, and it's interesting to me. Back when you and I got hired, I don't think they did a financial background check. If they did, they never would have hired us.
Right.
But they're like, this guy doesn't have two nickels to rub together. Who wants him? But that's one of the things that's happening now, and it's interesting to see that take place. And so I think that's a great thing you're doing, Jay, and I think it's going to take off well. I think, much like Anthony, the things that you're touching is turning to gold. Kind of like I told you they would. It might
Yeah.
start out a little slow. but I think you've hit the ground running, and I think you've done an amazing job. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Jay? I know I try to keep these kind of short on purpose.
Mhm.
I like to listen to a lot of podcasts, and I think anything that goes over an hour, a lot of times, there's a lot too much to it. And
Yeah.
so I like these shorter to the point episodes, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. But I mean, I'm all ears. We're all ears. So if there's anything you want to hit on that we didn't discuss yet,
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I'd wrap this up with is that, you know, I love what I do on the counseling side. The reality is that you don't have to have a master's degree in clinical mental health to be taking care of the people around you, right? That's just something that we can do with compassion. We can give people the benefit of the doubt. We can have some empathy. We can check in on them. 80% of what counseling is just being there to listen to somebody and being there for them and supporting them. And I think that I think that the fire service is really getting better at that. And that's the thing that I would love to just see continue to happen is just be a more supportive environment. We're hard on each other sometimes. Sometimes we deserve it, right? You do something stupid.
absolutely, yeah.
Sometimes you get poked at a little bit.
Oh, bro,
But
I got all kinds of stuff here that's mementos of stupid shit that I've done. So I
yeah,
get it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and that's part of letting somebody know that they're part of the group.
right,
But we also have to understand the difference when that person needs some help.
right.
And so that's what I hope we're encouraging people to do that. And I hope that we're encouraging people to really start just checking in on each other, taking care of other people, but also taking care of yourself. Right.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
one of the things about resiliency basically is a result of how much time you invest in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
To what degree am I taking care of myself? And one of the things we talk about is like you have to make yourself somebody that you're responsible for taking care of, because if you don't, other people are more likely to have to take care of you. So
Absolutely.
take that time. We don't like doing that. That seems selfish to us. We're
It
the
really.
last person that we focus on.
Mhm.
But hopefully we're starting to change that mindset that we're going to take care of ourselves and be more useful resource for those around us. So,
Cool.
yeah.
That's awesome. Um, you mentioned it in your bio before. How do you take care of yourself? I know you and your wife like to travel.
Yeah, we travel a lot. We bounce around a lot. We do spend a lot of time as far south as we can.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of shoveling snow anymore.
No.
I don't know what age it is, but there's a certain age that happens when falling becomes a life-changing event. You went
Mm-hmm.
from like, geez, in high school I could fall 100 times in a night playing football, and then
Mm-hmm.
at some point I fell down. I'm like, good Lord, that hurts a lot. And then it
Right.
affected my life for the next week. So not afraid. I'm not a fan of the ice anymore. We like
Yep.
to spend a lot of time down south. We travel a lot. And we try to set aside time each day to do stuff to take care of ourselves. When we're at our best, we're getting up, we're working out in the morning. We do a cup of coffee out on the porch to start the day, kind of silently. We,
Nice.
try to be intentional about what the day is going to look like. So it's little things. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be an overhaul. Like a lot of the program that I teach, one of the things we emphasize is attainable and sustainable changes. Don't set yourself up for failure by committing to a New Year's resolution that you have almost no ability to sustain over the course of a year, because shortly into it you're going to have a failure, and that's going to reflect on how you see yourself. But if we set ourselves up for success by doing things that we know that we can continue to do, that's a lot better approach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jay, this was awesome.
Yeah.
I really
Hey,
appreciate you coming on. If someone wants to contact you to teach a class, to even just to reach out, where can they reach you? How do they get a hold of you?
yeah. So I'll give out the phone number:
Yep.
207-458-0882. That's my direct cell. And if I'll keep handing it out until I'm famous. So
Yep. Yep.
that's the goal. The email is jason@theresilientresponder.com. You can find the Resilient Responder and Resilient Responder Education on Facebook. We love it when people follow our stuff. We try to put some stuff out every week. We do Motivational Monday, tries to get the
Nice.
week off on a positive note, and we
Awesome.
do Fact Friday, which is just kind of giving some information about the numbers about what it's like to be a first responder.
That's
And
pretty awesome, dude.
yeah, and so you can find us there on social media, and then theresilientresponder.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Outstanding, my man. Well, Jay, thanks for coming on. Folks, I hope you got something out of this today. Jason is a great resource, so if anybody out there is looking for any of this type of training, or if you just need somebody to talk to, as always, you can get a hold of me. By all means, call Jason, because he's my first phone call as well. So thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ryan.